Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Good evening and welcome to Biz1st Review 360. I am Shayan Jarampati, your host this evening. This week, heated arguments broke out during the cabinet meeting and parliament proceedings stooped low to brawls and fisticuffs after the speaker failed to table the Presidential Commission report on Treasury bond issuances. Now, this is because the Presidential Secretariat had informed that the report would only be forwarded to Parliament in a week's time. Moreover, debt-burdened national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines is back in the spotlight, with some reports suggesting that it is facing closure. We will be discussing developments surrounding the restructuring of Sri Lankan Airlines later on in the show. But first, let's start off with this week's top stories.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank said it will carry out forensic audits in relation to the issuance of Treasury bonds during 2008 to 2014 and Treasury bonds auctions held in March 2016. The Monetary Board made this announcement in response to a report by Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the country's largest securities scam. The Presidential Commission inquired into rigid bond sales conducted by the central bank under the Governor Arjuna Mahendran. The controversial sale benefited Perpetual Treasuries, a primary dealer in government securities connected to his son-in-law Arjuna Aloysius. Acknowledging the receipt of the Presidential Commission report, the Monetary Board detailed out the measures taken by the central bank to make Treasury bond transaction more transparent. The communique said the central bank has already implemented some of the recommendations therein, while measures have already been initiated to implement most of the other recommendations. The Monetary Board said the report is being studied and the board will initiate further actions as appropriate.
The Department of Agriculture has cautioned the farming community to use water in reservoirs and tanks very sparingly, as the quantum of rains expected in the first 3 months of 2018 may be the least compared to other months of the year. The island's the Agro-Climatology and Climate Change Division said medium-term forecasts suggest a few rainy days after the 9th of January, especially in the dry and intermediate zones in the island. The statement by the Agriculture Department further says no significant inflow to tanks and reservoirs can be expected until late March, and it's highly advisable to use water sparing to ensure adequate water storage for the rest of the 2017-2018 season. The island's Maha season falls during the northeast monsoon from September to March. Last year, Sri Lanka was hit by the worst drought in 4 decades, causing a loss of crops and income. Economic growth for 2017 is estimated to be below 4% owing to the intermittent floods and droughts and tight monetary and fiscal policies.
Earlier this week, budget airline Indigo announced that Sri Lanka will be their 8th international destination with effect from January the 20th. Chief Commercial Officer of Indigo, Sanjay Kumar, said there will be 3 flights, 2 being from Chennai and 1 from Bangalore connecting with Colombo. Indigo, one of the fastest growing airlines in the world, focuses on the theme on time, low fare and hassle-free traveling. The airline operates more than 1,000 flights a day covering 50 destinations.
That is why we are here to announce the launch of our 3 flights a day to Colombo market. Colombo to Bangalore, Bangalore to Colombo, that will be a daily flight, and Colombo to Chennai, very, very good convenient timing at 9:15 in the morning and 20:30 in the evening. Likewise, Chennai-Colombo will be 6:55 and 1200 hours out of Chennai. We are very sure that customers who are frequently traveling to India and also a lot of Indian customers who are coming to this market will be able to take the advantage of our expanding operations. We have got a feedback that Colombo is one of the fastest growing destination as far as Indian tourists are concerned. And our induction of this flight will only help build up that great opportunity for Indian travelers to come into this market and make use of the tourism opportunity which are prevalent in this beautiful country. Not only that, we also know there is a lot of similarity and a lot of ethnic connections between India and Sri Lanka. And I think whether you talk about Buddhist traffic, whether you talk about Tamil traffic, there are a lot of synergies, trade and religion. There are various reasons for people to travel to India back and forth. And I think with the induction of our flights, right now we are starting with 3 flights a day, 2 from Chennai, 1 from Bangalore, but over a period of next couple of months, we should be able to grow this network to a wider range and more destination out of India.
Flight rates start from 14,000 rupees upwards, while allowing Sri Lankans also to fly to Singapore with Indigo Airlines via Chennai.
A needle pulling thread, a note to follow soon, a note to follow soon, a drink with jam and bread, that will bring us back to dawn. I am 16, going on 17, I know that I'm naive. Fellows I meet may tell me I'm sweet, and willingly I believe. I am 16, going on 17, innocent as a rose. Bachelor dandies, drinkers like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to
Sound of Music will feature Cameron Pretorius, the South African actress tasked with playing the lead role of Maria in the production, and Nicholas Mode from the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art will perform the role of Captain Von Trapp. Award-winning soprano Janelle Visagi will be playing Mother Abbas. 12 children from Sri Lanka will have the opportunity to appear in the large commercial musical and perform alongside a fully professional company, adding flavour to the play's award-winning international cast that brought the Sound of Music critical acclaim.
Sri Lanka is a developing country, and the city of Colombo appears to be literally exploding with many new opportunities. Providing Western theatre will help put Colombo on the map in a way that Singapore and other Asian cities have successfully managed.
The show will be staged at the Nelum Pokana Theatre in Colombo from 14th to 18th February 2018. Addressing the gathering, Deputy Chairman of the John Keels Group, Krishan Balendra, said the production will help boost Colombo as an entertainment hub.
As you may be aware, this production opens a unique opportunity for 12 children from Sri Lanka to perform amidst an internationally acclaimed cast and train with the International Productions Child Director. The Sound of Music is one of the most famous and best loved musicals of all time. In February 2018, this extraordinary theatrical performance will dazzle audiences in Sri Lanka, enabling them to experience a world-class musical that has made its mark on some of the world's most revered stages, including those on the West End and Broadway.
Is Sri Lankan Airlines on the brink of closure? Stay with Biz1st Review 360. We will be back with the answers. Hello, welcome back. You're watching Biz1st Review 360. With us in the studio is the former CEO of Air New Guinea, Wasantha Kumar Siri. Nadim, it's over to you.
Thank you, Shahin. It's no secret that Sri Lankan Airlines is on the verge of collapse. For the past 2 years, we've been talking about the need to restructure this ailing state-owned enterprise and the need to rethink and revamp, which in fact is the theme of Sri Lankan Airlines annual report for 2016-17. But how successful has this rethink and revamp drive been? Because the airline is in a worse financial position right now than it was 2 years ago. We're joined by Mr. Wasantha Kumarasiri, who used to head Air New Guinea and who was in fact responsible for the restructuring of that ailing airline, and he managed to turn it around into a successful profit-making airline. Mr. Kumarasiri, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for joining us on Biz1st Review 360 and taking time off your busy schedule. Let me start by asking you, the last week, or on Sunday rather, we heard it was reported in the newspapers that the Cabinet Committee on Economic Management has set a 6-month time frame for this restructuring process to be completed. For an airline in such dire straits as Sri Lankan, is it possible to do this revamp in a period of 6 months?
With my experience in the aviation, it's very challenging. It's not possible to, because the extent of restructure need to be decided. If the extent of the restructure is to fully fix the problem, 6 months is not sufficient. To restructure a similar size airline will take between at least 1 year plus 1.5 years to 2 years is the more realistic time frame, because restructuring an airline it's a very critical task. The reason is we are restructuring a operating airline. The reason why I'm saying this one is when I had to do a restructure of operating airline, my first task was to maintain the safety of the airline, safety of the traveling public. So we cannot take the eye off the ball, the safety of the passengers. So during a restructure, it needs to be done in such a manner that someone is in charge in running the operations of the airline, and another team is looking at the restructuring process, but with leadership. So that's how to do that. But within a 6 months' time, if you want to do that in a faster and in a rush way, it has its own consequences.
So we have right now, there's a committee of public officials which is chaired by the Treasury Secretary. There's another committee of ministers which includes the Transport Minister, Mr. Nimal Siripala de Silva, the Special Projects Minister, Dr. Sarath Amanugama, among others. My question is this: so you have a political committee, a bureaucratic committee, and another restructuring, an interim board that is supposed to take over and oversee the restructuring process. Is this a case of too many cooks spoil the soup?
Okay. Yeah, it's if there are too many players involved, then the people who are on the ground, they will have a situation they don't know, because so what happens in this kind of restructure, I'll tell you exactly. There will be many opposing views among the political leadership, bureaucratic leadership, and the board. And then when it comes to the actual implementation, the people who are privy to these I would say conflicting, opposing views among the members, you don't know which way to go. So the best way to handle this situation, as an experienced person, my suggestion is the government through the political leadership, they should give the direction, the policy framework, policy guideline, and say this is what we need for the people, and the bureaucrats, the team of bureaucrats that are formed there, they should do the scrutinizing role. So the bureaucrats and the government together set the agenda and say this is what we want, this is the expectation, in this time frame these things need to be achieved, and give that to the board as a challenge. The board then should take that as a challenge and take it to the management. End of the day, this actual work will be done by the management. This brings me to my next question. We've seen now in the past few weeks the 6 of the 7 board members of Sri Lankan have resigned. They've handed in a letter saying that they're willing to resign at the request of the Prime Minister, and the news is that their resignation has been accepted. You mentioned that the actual execution, the people who will be doing the nuts and bolts work of rethinking and revamping will have to be the management. There has been no change in the top management in the past 2 years. The rethink and revamp idea has not taken off. Who should be held accountable for this? Is it the board of directors, or is it the management which has essentially failed to execute its mandate and carry out their duties? It comes to a collective responsibility. I mean, when I say collective responsibility, everybody. If there were guidelines from the political leadership to the bureaucrats, then to how and what is expected within a period of time, and then it's given to the directors already, and if they have taken that to the management and not implemented or haven't achieved, you may not be in a position to achieve 100%. At least above 50% achievement is better than 0 achievement, right?
But in this case, the government has spread the responsibility around. The eggs are in several baskets, the eggs of responsibility in this case. Because you have the management of the airline, the board of directors, that's 2 tiers there. Then you have the public-private partnership unit, which has been tasked with the public-private partnership agency, which has been tasked with finding an investor, with attracting an investor for Sri Lankan Airlines. So that's a separate level of responsibility there. Now the head of that unit is tipped to take over as the chairman of the board of Sri Lankan Airlines. In such a sort of convoluted structure, can you really get anything done? Can the management really do anything in that case?
I will tell you with my past experience this situation, right? Now the airline is a company registered under the Companies Act, and also it has a board. Board is appointed by the government, okay? And also there is an independent party, public enterprise division or ministry or whatever the unit. That unit has a board, I believe. It has a leadership. Now there will be conflicts because these are public assets. To say, I'll take an example. I was in both seats. I was the CEO of the airline. Later on, I became the managing director of state enterprises system in a country. Because I was at the airline, we were continuing with the reforms, but I maintained my separation into the airline. I can't go and tell the airline this is how you will do the restructure, because at the public enterprise, as the head of the public enterprise system,
that's a policy hat.
You will be the one to review and make the decision together with your board whether this solution is good for the country or the bad for the country. So you can't be the judge and the jury both, and it will create conflicts. I think it's up to the leaders and the gentleman who is tipped to take up how to resolve that situation, because you can't wear both hats and having conflicting responsibility. Okay, because one day you will be asked, why have you taken this decision and you are here heading this unit to restructure the airline, and on the other side you are the one to approve it.
So basically the process needs to be streamlined, and there needs to be a proper tiers of accountability and accountability mechanisms.
Correct.
With that, we're going for a short commercial break. On the other side, we'll be asking the question, is privatization or shutting down the airline the solution? Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Mr. Wasantha Kumarasiri. He's a expert in restructuring airlines, let's say. He's the former head of Air New Guinea, the national carrier of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Kumarasiri, Sri Lankan Airlines, the debt burden is astronomical. It's scary to think about. It's in a situation where if we were to sell it, we'd actually have to pay the buyer for taking it on, or the government would have to take on all the liabilities. Okay. There has been some talk about the need to either privatize or completely shut down the airline in order to stop this from being a burden on the Sri Lankan economy and the Sri Lankan people. Is there any other way out of this?
Okay. I saw some good suggestions in the past. The suggestion was that government to take over the entire liabilities of the past and then reset. Now, when you look at Sri Lankan Airlines' current balance sheet and its debt-ridden situation today, it is not the immediate past, it is not the past, it is past. Many regimes have gone through that. Sri Lankan Airline may not have earned profits, but after it took over with previously managed by a foreign entity, and it has its own pros and cons, I must say. And also, then coming into the current situation, even at that point of time, it had debts in the balance sheet. What was not there was the losses, this level of losses, but the debts were still there. Those debts are, even today, it is continuing. So these debts are accumulated historical debts. So we also have, to create the current, the loss-making situation, there have been certain decisions made recently and also in the past that have caused the situation. Okay. Now, we need the aircraft fleet to operate, and also we as an airline and also as a country, we should have a fleet policy. Now, we have to look at what is the average age of our fleet, okay? And then looking at the restructure, there are many ways to restructure. The government can take over the fleet. The government can take over the liabilities and reset the airline. And also, in past experience, I have taken drastic decisions, but in consultation with the workforce and the people and all the unions, fully supported. When I had to do some staff shedding, we did so. But we
you have to initially reduce the number of staff. You
need to immediately, as a sense of urgency, you need to look at where can we cut down certain cost, and that may include identify certain staff number and send them on compulsory leave, negotiate a certain retirement scheme,
VRS,
voluntary retirement scheme. There are many ways. And also, when you do these restructures and voluntary retirement schemes, my experience is it has to be done extremely carefully, because the experienced and capable people, you think that the incapable people or inexperienced people are the first one to raise their hand? It's only the experienced people will raise their hand. They take the retirement scheme and they leave the organization. Then the organization will be left with the balance.
The incompetency.
I wouldn't say that, but okay, the balance. So therefore, this voluntary retirement scheme has to be selective, targeted, and do it in the way that it enhances the airline. Otherwise, when these experienced people leave, you will have to hire them back as consultants.
But if the restructuring process is successful, then you do end up creating more jobs as well.
Correct.
If you turn it around into a profit-making business.
Yes,
Was this your experience at
That's correct.
As well?
Yeah, and initially the Air Niugini was restructured. We reduced the staff, and then we expanded the airline. As I said earlier in a different discussion, I had only 8 aircraft. I replaced the entire 8 aircraft, plus we increased it to 28 aircraft. So that's because of the expansion. And also, at the time, I had 1,200 staff with 8 aircraft, and then with 28 aircraft, we had only 2,000 staff. So the staff number was reduced below 100 per aircraft, whereas previously it was almost close to 200. Right?
Per aircraft.
Per aircraft. So this restructure need to be done. It can be done. And also, in my strong opinion, that the debt-ridden situation in Sri Lankan airline, it is not alone. There are many other airlines within the region in a similar way. But they are cutting down their cost, they are operating a lean and mean operation, and also working towards bringing it to profitability.
Do you feel that there is a lack of realism when it comes to how the authorities here are taking on this issue of restructuring Sri Lankan Airlines? Do you feel that they are unable to, unwilling to accept certain realities?
I think they have the. I think my feel is, I may be wrong. There's a fear, the shock there to see its level of loss and also level of debts in this airline. Okay, and also there appears to be the lack of technical knowledge how to do this. And as I said earlier, restructuring an airline is different to restructuring a normal business, because you are carrying passengers. When you cannot bring fear factor and also uncertainty factor into the minds of the people, because in an airline aviation world, for the safety, everyone is responsible. Everyone is responsible, from the cleaner to the CEO to the board. Everyone is responsible. And this is a organization that's carrying passengers. It brings the confidence, and more we keep beating on Sri Lankan airline, and if we make it more and more, the lesser the discussion point is better. Okay, because it brings uncertainty. It brings fear into the minds of the people, because all these passengers have taken the seats on the airline based on his trust. But when we see this debt level and its positioning, and also fear of or suggestions to shut it down, it brings, this is a commercial entity, we should not do that.
On that note, we have to wrap up. Mr. Kumarasiri, thank you once again for taking time off and coming on Biz1st Review 360. Your experience, of course, very valuable in this discussion. At the end of the day, it all boils down to trust. Can we trust the authorities that have been entrusted with this task to show results? Or will the Sri Lankan flag, the national carrier, disappear from the skies forever? Back to you, Shahin.
And that is all the news we have for you for tonight. You can look us up on Facebook by just typing Biz1st Review 360. I've been Shahin Jurampati. Good night and have a pleasant weekend ahead of you.